Welcome to this week's installment, our Football Officials video training series. This is the 2017 edition. We're studying the National Federation of High School Rules and 5-man mechanics. This video is produced by the Arkansas Association of High School Officials. Visit our website at aahso.com. We're helping good officials get better. Technical assistance provided by Dax Hill, Greg Downey, and George Demetrio. Video assistance provided by Chuck Scott. Produced by Kenny Sanders. Our executive in charge of production is Walt Coleman. I'm your host, Todd Allen. I know you want to be a better football official every week when you step on the field, and rules knowledge is the foundation of any good official. But the rule book can be overly technical, dry, and boring. It's just hard to stay focused. I personally recommend the Reading Study Guide for the NFHS rules. Its easy reading style are both informative and fun. The general overviews, in-depth discussions, and quizzes give a great practical application of the rules. I've taught football officiating to hundreds of officials, but I never hesitate to recommend the Reading Study Guide to the NFHS rules. When you're through learning, you're through. Let's take a look at this free kick play, and I want to ask this question. When should you expect the teams to attempt an onside kick or a short free kick? And the answer is, you should really expect that anytime they line up in a kick formation. That way you're not surprised by the onside kick, as we see this receiving team is in this play. For back judges and for line judges, because you guys are the up men in a normal free kick mechanic, this burden is great on you when a team utilizes an onside kick attempt when it wouldn't traditionally be used. Early in the game, to start the second half, when they're ahead in the score. They can do it at any time. So anytime we line up at a free kick mechanic, especially the back judge and the line judge, you need to be thinking about short free kick. Because you two are going to have to determine whether the ball goes 10 yards before the kicking team recovers it, and it also has to touch the ground. Let's just look at 6.1.6, and this is on page 54 of the rule book, and it says any K player may recover a free kick if it has both touched the ground and goes beyond the plane of R's free kick line. The two requirements may occur in any order. If a free kick becomes dead inbounds between the goal lines when no players in possession, or inbounds anywhere when players are in joint possession, then the ball is awarded to R. The ball has to travel 10 yards, and it has to have hit the ground. If K recovers the ball and both of those two requirements are met in any order, then they may keep the ball. Now, we run this play here, and we see that those two things do occur, but watch the block on this player right here. And look where the ball is. Man, this is super tight. But the ball is, in fact, beyond 10 yards when this block is made. Otherwise, this has been an illegal 5-yard block, and we would expect someone, the line judge primarily, to make this call. But this is a tough play with two guys. And some questions came up about whether this player who is blocked is a defenseless player because he's attempting to recover the kick, but he is not. He's not in position. He's a matter of fact, of these 5 guys here, he's the furthest from the ball. So he's not on his way to recover the ball, or he's trying to recover the ball, but he's not on his way to catching a ball or looking at a ball in flight. He's not defenseless by any stretch of the imagination under the National Federation of High School rules. So he is not protected. And some question came up, about whether this might be a foul for kick-catch interference because he's on his way to recover the ball. But clearly the rules in KCI are kick-catch interference, which are, that's Rule 6.5.6 on page 57. And it just says while a free kick is in flight. In flight is the operative word here. This is a grounded kick. So there is no way that this player can be protected by kick-catch interference rules. So while any free kick is in flight, in or beyond the neutral zone to the receiver's goal line, or any scrimmage kick is in flight beyond the neutral zone to the receiver's goal line, K shall not touch the ball, or R, unless blocked into the ball, or to ward off a blocker. And B here, just to obstruct R's path to the ball. So this is where there was some confusion among some officials about whether this was a foul, because obvious here, K does block R while he's trying to get to the ball, but the fact is this kick is not in flight, so that protection does not extend to him. I had a question from a coach too about kick-catch interference, and if the kicking team recovers the ball in flight, even if no receiver is in the area, and this is a rule that's unique to the National Federation of High Schools, but if a kicking team player catches a free kick in flight, then it is a foul for kick-catch interference. And it doesn't matter if anyone's in position or not to receive that. So this is an interesting play just to look at and to talk about. great in your pregame this week. Talk about short free kicks in non-traditional settings when we're lined up in our long kick mechanic with the umpire and the head linesman downfield, the referee downfield, and then the burden of a short free kick falls on only 2 officials. Talk about how you're going to handle that, mechanically how your crew is going to work that play, and then be ready for these anytime the ball is kicked. Let's take a look at this play. And this play is going to involve offensive holding. And holding call is, by and large, far and away the most difficult call that we have to make because there is just so much judgment involved. And when you involve judgment with so many different people, then it's hard to be consistent. And our greatest challenge as a football official is to be consistent. And consistent is not only consistent with how you make the call week in, week out, play in and play out, but how do the other crews make the call week in and week out. It's just really important that we're consistent. So what we kind of have to do is use these training videos to kind of develop a center where everyone works toward. And that doesn't always mean that the center is the right place to be, and it's going to change from year to year as the game evolves and how we interpret the rule evolves. But let's just take a look at this play. And this involves potentially the umpire and the referee. It involves the umpire because it's going to involve this right guard right here. And a big defensive end just comes crashing in, steps right through the A gap, and the handoff's underneath trying to get to the B gap. And this guard here on the right side just wraps the defender up. And this end zone view is really, really good. And referees, although this is not your primary key, this opens up right to you at the point of attack. If we look at the position of the umpire, and I run it back here to the beginning of the play. Now, umpires, critically important. And your keys, across the middle here, it's really important that you get in a position where you can always see the snap. Because seeing the ball movement first is critically important for our umpire. We want him to rule on the legality of the snap. So you have to, that's the most important thing, is to be in a position to see the snap. But you can tell by the position this umpire takes that when this guard crashes down here and wraps up the defender, the center and the nose guard are completely screening the umpire out of the play. There's no way he can see this potential foul. But referee working the point of attack, this opens up right to you. You've got to quickly assess the threats on these tackles and get to the point of attack, and this should open right up to you. It's very, very obvious. It should just jump out at you. We wrap this defender completely up and restrict him as he's chasing the ball carrier, and the ball goes right through the B gap. This is a foul for offensive holding. Offensive holding is one of the things we need to be more consistent on. Remember, we're looking for a material restriction, which occurs here. We're looking for it to be at the point of attack, which occurs here, and have an effect on the play. Certainly does here. This defensive player is just a monster, and can't contain him here except for by holding. This is a play where we improperly officiate offensive holding. Should have been called and was not. It's a no call for the referee. All right, another scrimmage play to look at. We've looked at one almost every week, and that's because these plays are very, very difficult to officiate with 5 officials. We've got these players that run and scatter out all over the field. And when we talk about these scrimmage plays, what's important to emphasize is the positioning, especially of the back judge and the line judge, who must work together to box these plays in down the field. Back judge your position 5 yards deeper than the deepest receiver at a 45-degree angle, and you're cheating to the head linesman's side of the field. Line judge, make sure the kicker catches the snap successfully, and then you should release downfield 15, 18 yards if you can, and get set up and get stationary and officiate these plays. I want to take a look at this wide shot here, and notice just as the receiver catches the ball, there's impact with the kicking team player. And I've got an end zone shot here too, and as I take you just to the action where the hit takes place, I want to point out a couple of things about this the posture and positioning of the kicking team player. Notice how he lowers his position, lowers his head. He's going to strike his opponent with the crown of the helmet. This is a foul. Unfortunately, on this play, we do not have a flag, but we could potentially be having 2 different officials looking at this action. Certainly, this falls right into the lap of the back judge. That's why this 45-degree angle is so important. You've got to be able to rule on this contact. You've got to see the steps approaching this contact with clarity and realize and recognize when these players are lowering their helmets like this, because this is just a nasty lick. And this is a defenseless player, too. And we know this is a defenseless player because we're great at Rule 2, and I talk about this over and over again, but 2.32.16, the importance on page 35, of knowing that a defenseless player is simply just a player who, because of his physical position and focus of concentration, is especially vulnerable to injury. And this is the part of the rule that's really, really important to apply at this particular play. But it also goes on to say that a player who initiates contact against a defenseless player is responsible for making legal contact when in question the player is defenseless. And we also know that, and there's been a lot of talk about what in fact the rule is on defenseless players this year and how it's changed from last year. And the reality is it hasn't changed at all. We just simply moved some specific examples of defenseless players from the case book to the rule book. And one of those specific examples is a player who is in the process of fielding a scrimmage kick or has just completed catching a scrimmage kick, but not yet established himself as a runner. What exactly does that mean? In the NFL and the NCAA, we talk about these players as needing to make a football move. And a football move is just simply exactly what it sounds like. You're not in the process of catching the ball or focusing and refocusing on players up the field and figuring out where you are. After you watch a ball come from high into the air into your arms, you lose perspective about where your opponents are. So there's a transition for a step or two where that's taking place. And during this transition, these players are still defenseless. That doesn't occur in this video. This guy's just actually completed the catch here and then gets hit. So clearly this is a defenseless player. And then I want to talk about what exactly is a flagrant foul. Because if we go over into 9.4.3G on page 70, and this just tells us that making contact with an opponent, including the defenseless player, which we established from 2.32.16 that this player is defenseless, which is deemed unnecessary or excessive, and which incites roughness. Clearly, this helmet contact is illegal. It does incite roughness, and it's excessive. So it meets the definitions of 9.4.3G. But if you look on the next page on the statement of penalty, it's a disqualification also if any fouls under these articles are judged by the game officials to be flagrant. And I think that when we look at the definition of what is flagrant, because that's also contained in the rules, in 2.16.2c, look on page 29, and it just says flagrant is a foul that's so severe or extreme that it places an opponent in danger of serious injury. And that's the part of this rule on flagrants that is so important. And it goes on to say that or involves violations that are extremely or persistently vulgar or abusive conduct. So I think that we can say the first part of this that places an opponent in danger of serious injury applies to this. So this is a personal foul, and it's also a flagrant personal foul. I don't want to get carried away here where we're just simple fouls or simple violations of illegal personal conduct. We're calling them flagrant. That's not the case. There is certainly an element here where we have to rise to greater risk of injuring our opponent. And these defenseless players who are struck with the crown of the head, when these players come in on the kicking team, lowering their targets, lowering their heads, and initiating this contact right at the numbers, and then there is some contact with the helmet that knocks this player's helmet off. So I think this one clearly meets that definition. And we supported a flagrant personal foul on this and a disqualification. But as I mentioned, unfortunately, we just don't get in position here, or we have some breakdown in recognizing this conduct, and we don't get a flag down on this play at all. This is a foul, and we would support a disqualification on this play. That's it for this week's training video. Thanks for sticking around till the end. I want to tell you that this week conference play starts. So we expect an uptick in the level of competition, in the intensity, and that's going to spill over in every aspect of the game. It should not spill over in the officiating. Be consistent. Make sure that all of your calls are big. Make them big. Leave the ticky-tack stuff out on the field. Talk to the players. Preventive officiate as much as you can. Be firm, fair, and consistent on the calls that you do have. And like I said, make them be big. Make them show up on video, and so that they're easy to see. If you have to spend a lot of time explaining what you called and why you called it, it's a really good chance that you should have left that one out on the field. We had a great conference call with the referees this week. Our crew chief conference call, it was on Tuesday. We're going to be continuing to do that throughout the year. I'm very encouraged by the feedback that we're getting. Dialogue, communication, it's really, really important that we all work together. I also want to mention that some of the things that I got a lot of calls and emails about what we talked about on the free kick. And the main thing is let's focus on the things that we agree on, and coverage and keys and mechanics are really, really important. But we want to stick to that National Federation of High School Mechanic right out of the mechanics manual. So if anything I said that you caught was in conflict with that, then stick with the manual. That's the important thing here, that we're consistent with that manual. And I do think that we're going to work together as a group, along with some other states, to try to develop some changes in that free kick mechanic at the national level. I think there's a lot of support for that around the country, and I have talked with a number of other states, officials associations, and so I do expect a change. But right now, let's just make sure everything we do is consistent with that National Federation of High School Mechanics manual for a 5-man crew. If myself or anyone in the association can do anything here to help you, please feel free to drop me an email. Here's my email address. It's todd@aahso.com. If you sent me an email in the last couple of weeks and I haven't replied to you, I apologize. I have read everything that's come in, but we have had a number of emails and it's been just a little bit challenging to try to get all of those back. We are going to try to feature next week an email from our In the Bag segment that we used to do quite a bit of, and I like to do that. We're going to try to get back to that next week. And I've also got a play, and we're going to begin next week talking about the all but one principle. And I've got a really interesting play to show you, and we're going to feature that next week in our training video. So, for the Arkansas Association of High School Officials, this is Todd Allen saying I hope to see you on the field real soon.